Hey guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the Samsung Galaxy Mega. So the Mega is a new line of Android smartphones from Samsung. Now the Mega refers to the large screen size. So this is the 6.3 inch model. There is a 5.8 inch model. 6.3 obviously is the more higher spec version, but the interesting thing about the Mega series is that right now they are not high spec phones and kind of priced in the mid-range. So although you get a very large screen, you actually get a fairly mid-range phone priced accordingly. So it's kind of an interesting product. Right now it's not sold in the US. I don't expect it to come to the US, but it is sold globally. For example, I have the French version here, French language version. This will be sold in the UK, for example. So you can pick this up if you're in Europe. And if you're in the US, you can pick this up, of course, from third-party sellers. And this will work on GSM carriers like AT&T and T-Mobile. Will work on HSPA Plus here, and will work on LTE in the global market. So let's go ahead and take a look to see what we get. Now in terms of specs, you're going to have to excuse my French here, but we have a 1.7 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon 400 processor and an Adreno 305 GPU. We also have 1.5 gigs of RAM, or 8 and 16 gig capacities internally. You can also expand that thanks to a micro SD card slot up to 64 gigs. You have an 8 megapixel camera with a 1.9 megapixel secondary camera, so pretty good cameras. NFC technology, a very large 3200 milliamp hour battery. It also supports GPS and GLONASS. We have a micro USB port for charging, which also supports MHL, so you can output HD video through your USB port thanks to a dongle, which you have to purchase separately. We have our model number here, which is the GTI 9205, and we have Android 4.2 running on here. So this is the latest version of Android, also supporting the latest version of TouchWiz UX, which is very similar to what you get on the Galaxy S4. So let's go ahead and unbox this thing. Just crack the seal. Lift the lid, and there is our Galaxy Mega GPS NFC 1.7 gigahertz processor, HD super clear LCD. This is actually a 720p display, and there we go. That's our Android branding lifted up. As you can see, this is the black version. You can get this in white, although it wasn't shipping at the time I purchased mine. Normally, I prefer white. So let's set this aside for just a moment. Looks exactly like a GS4, just blown up quite a bit. And let's take a look to see what we get inside this box. Let's flip this around here. So you can see we have our manuals in French. I wonder if there's an English version in here. I don't think so. Nope, just French. Now they've also included a 4 gig micro SD card, so right there. And they also give us an adapter for using this with our computer. So I'm not sure if all versions shipping will include this, but that's kind of a nice bonus. We have our European wall adapter here for charging our device. So white doesn't quite match the black foam, but that's okay. We also have our micro USB charging cable. We have our set of headphones. So these are the Samsung headphones, in-ear headphones with those gels that fit into your ear. Let's see if they've included any other. Yep, there they are. They're just kind of slotted in here. So these are the other gels you can put in your ear. Find the right fit. We also have that very large battery in here. Again, 3200 milliamp hours. Let me see if I can get this out. A little tab here. There you go. Definitely the largest battery I've seen. So let's go ahead and take a look at the phone so we can pop the battery in. All right, so let's get back to the phone itself. We're going to peel off some plastic, but first you can see we have some illustrations here demonstrating how to install the battery. So that's pretty obvious. Let's peel this off. You can see that sort of plastic. We still have that glossy plastic. Again, very much like the Galaxy S4. You can see it kind of has a weave pattern to it. Looks very sharp, especially in these bright lights. Let's go to the front here and peel off the front panel. Peels right off. That's a lot of glossy glass right there. Looks very sharp. So along the side you see we have that chrome bezel. Again, very evocative of the GS4. This is not metal. This is still plastic, but it looks very sharp. We have our volume rocker on this side. We have our sleep wake power button on the right side. You can see it's still placed in a convenient spot for your thumb, so it's a pretty natural location. It's not all the way up here, for example. Same with the volume rocker. Down here, find that USB charging port as well as a microphone. Actually, you can see I have more plastic on here. We're going to have to peel it off. You can see we have an IR blaster. We have another microphone, noise cancellation or other microphone. We have our headphone jack. And that's about it. So let's go ahead and start peeling off this plastic. So as you can see, just like the GS4, they like to wrap it in lots of little pieces of plastic around the bezel so it doesn't scratch in transit. All right, so I think that is the last piece of plastic. So let's go ahead and take a look at the front. So we have our home button, again, very familiar to any Samsung phone. You can see we have that weave pattern along the front carried over on the front panel. Up here you can see we have our earpiece as well as our ambient light sensor and proximity sensor as well as our camera. Now what you don't see here, what you get in the GS4 is an RGB sensor for adjusting the display. So kind of stripped down a little bit from the GS4. Let's go ahead and take off the back panel. You can see we also have our speaker down here, again, a lot like the GS4. We have our LED flash, 8 megapixel camera. They do not have a piece of plastic over the lens like they do with the GS4, so that's good. So let's go ahead and peel off this back panel. Again, you have a little thumb port here for popping off the panel. Comes right off. So you pretty much have a very large slot for the battery. Now something interesting here is that we actually have a combined micro SD and micro SIM slot. So they're stacked on top of each other, so that's kind of interesting. So you can see below here we have our SIM. Up here we have our SD card slot. Now, like the GS4, the battery itself contains the NFC technology, not the back panel. So if you look inside, you'll see there are no antennas here for NFC. So let's go ahead and install the battery. Just drop it in and put the back cover back on. So it snaps into place. Pretty familiar for any Samsung phone. And it fits on pretty snugly. All right, so let's boot this up for the first time. Just going to tap and hold the power button. You can feel a little vibration. Samsung Galaxy Mega GT i9 205. You can also see we have a LED notification light up here. Now during the setup process, Samsung kind of coaches you on some of the features available through TouchWiz. That includes S-Beam, so if you tap on S-Beam, you'll get a little illustration on how that works. Same with AirView. We're pretty familiar with AirView. Basically, you can hover your finger over your display and it will detect the presence and act accordingly. So certain apps can take advantage of that, and we'll demonstrate that in a bit. We have Smart Stay technology as well, so it's able to see your eyes and will act accordingly, so it won't turn off the screen, that sort of thing. We have Easy Mode, so you can enable Easy Mode if you want a simpler user experience. And we have Adapt Display. Basically, it adapts the display to the ambient lighting conditions. All right, so let's go to next. Now I can name my phone here, so it wants to do Michael Kukalka Gala, so let's fix that and just call it the Galaxy Mega. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at this giant display again, 6.3 inches, 720p resolution, good for 233 pixels per inch. Certainly not as pixel dense as something like the Galaxy S4, which is a 1080p display over a 5-inch display. So that gives us a pixel density well north of 400. So not the pixel sharpness of the Galaxy S4, but still pretty impressive. The thing that really jumps out to me is that although this is an LCD display, it has very rich contrast, very rich colors, so it still looks absolutely fantastic. So as you can see, we have that TouchWiz user experience, again, very similar to GS4. I really like that lock screen. I really would like to be there right now. So you just swipe up, unlock it. You can also swipe down from the lock screen to access your quick toggles up here. So you see all the familiar toggles you're familiar with from the GS4, such as Smart Stay, AirView, NFC, S-Beam, Wi-Fi hotspot, multi-windowing, screen mirroring, power saving mode, blocking mode. Blocking mode basically is a do not disturb feature. Mobile data, Bluetooth, screen rotation lock, sound, GPS, and Wi-Fi. What you don't see here is smart scrolling, which this phone does not have like the GS4. You also have your brightness controls, and you have your ongoing notifications. So if we swipe to unlock, you can see we have a pretty familiar TouchWiz user interface. This is the default configuration. So you can see all the apps they've included on the home screens. So you can see also we have these widgets. We have our calendar widget. We have our Story Album, which is an app for organizing your photos on your device. You also have your widget here for your Samsung Music Player. You have your weather widget, your search widget. You have email, camera, gallery, Samsung App Store, and the Play Store, as well as the Internet Android browser, which is interesting here. So it's not, the default browser is not Google Chrome. It's the Android browser that Samsung put together. Messaging, contacts, phone. They do include Chrome, I believe. I don't know if this installed when I restored for my account, but Chrome is there in the app drawer. So again, you just go to the app drawer and you'll find even more apps. And you can also use this little scrolling gesture here to scroll between screens. You can do that also on the home screen. And you can manage it just by pinching out like this. So if you want to change your home screen, you just tap the home button at the top of each screen. And you can move them around. by dragging it around, and you can add other home screens like that. Or you can tap and hold them and remove them. There you go. Works also the same with apps. So for example, I don't want to use this browser. So we can go up to remove. We can go to the app, drawer, get Chrome. Go to Chrome here and drop it down. There you go. Now because this is such a large screen, we now have rotation for landscape and portrait mode. So it's kind of similar to Samsung tablets. We haven't really seen this on their smartphones. Now there is a lot we can do from the lock screen thanks to Android 4.2, which now supports lock screen widgets. So for example, we can swipe across this clock face and get to one of our screens. Now, I've already added one widget here, and I can go and add another widget to another screen just by hitting this plus button. So here I can add Gmail. So I'll add Gmail to my lock screen, and it's asking me what I want to see in Gmail. So let me just go to my inbox. So now you can see it's loading that. So if I go to lock, unlock, swipe, I get Google Now, and now I get my Gmail. So I can quickly look through that without unlocking the phone. Now we have two options here for the right lock screen. So whatever's to the right of the home lock screen, you can get two options. You can either get the camera, or you can get this series of apps. So you can modify this by going to the edit button, and you can remove them just like that, or you can add them from your list of available apps. Now because this is Android 4.2, we have two ways of accessing the drop-down menu. So you can use the single swipe to access your notification panel along with your quick settings toggles, or you can use the two-finger swipe to get right to your quick settings toggles. And you can also jump between them with this little button in the top. Now if you're under your quick settings here, you can also edit them. It takes you to the notification panel settings. So here you can rearrange them. So for example, if you want Smart Stay up here, you can do that, and it bumps Wi-Fi back down here. If you want to put it back, there you go. Now, like all Samsung devices, we still have our off-screen menu controls. So we have our menu button, back button, as well as our home button. Now, these do have dual purposes. So for example, if we tap and hold the home button, we do get our recent apps. So here we can swipe them out of the way to close them, or we can tap on any one of them to launch them. We can also go to our manager here. So we can manage our active applications, so we can end them, download apps. We can manage our RAM, so we can clear some of that memory, and we have storage, so we can see how much storage we're taking up. Now you can also get to Google Now from here. So if you hit the G, that'll take you to Google Now. So we can use Google Now. What's the weather like tomorrow in Rochester Hills, Michigan?
Tomorrow's forecast for Rochester Hills is 75 degrees with a chance of storm.
Now we can also double tap the home button to get to S Voice. What's the weather like tomorrow in Rochester Hills, Michigan?
You'll hear some thunder on Saturday.
Now you can activate multi-windowing mode by tapping and holding the back button here. So this is the multi-window tray, and basically you can scroll through the available apps for this mode. You can also edit what appears here. So if you don't want, for example, Hangouts to be here, you can just drag it out of there, or you can drag it back in. Now you can also move this from left to right sides if you want it on the left side. There you go. You can also tap it to hide it. It automatically hides itself after a period of inactivity. You can also use this in landscape mode. So if it goes to landscape, you can see it's either on the left or right hand side, and again you can move it around from the left to right side if you wish. Now multi-windowing allows you to run two apps at the same time. So for example, we can launch Chrome and then we can grab another app. So for example, let's see if we can grab the YouTube app, drop that here. So there you go. You have the full The Verge website up here, which I can scroll through, and then you have YouTube down here. And you can see it's also coaching me on how to use YouTube here. So for example, I can go ahead and launch one of my uploads and watch it in the background. So let's go ahead and launch this one.
Portable and powerful.
So there we go. We can scroll it up or down.
I can take it with me wherever I go.
And you can also switch between the screens. So you can go to bottom or top screen. You can also go to full screen mode, or you can close this window.
I like to read on
So for example, full screen, there you go. And then we have to go back to drop Chrome back in here if you want it.
Any book I want. It's like an entire library at my...
Now because this is such a large phone, Samsung has added something called one-handed operation, which we've seen with the Note 2. So if you go to settings, go to my device, you'll see one-handed operation. You can toggle all of these on or off. They're off by default. So if you go to learn about one-handed operation, it basically illustrates it for you. So it kind of aligns the keyboard to the left hand or right hand side of the screen so you can use your thumb. Let me just demonstrate that for you. So if I've enabled this. If I go to my phone dialer, you can see right now it's orientated toward the left. If I want to use it on the right, to do that, and you can see it's within thumb typing distance. So that's very useful with a phone so large. Now, one of the more interesting apps here is S Translator, which also launched with the Galaxy S4. Basically, you can speak in one language and it will output in another. So this is great if you're traveling. You get lots of languages. So for example, I have German selected, but you can select Brazilian, English UK, English the US, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, simplified Chinese, and Spanish. So basically, I can speak in English. How old are you? It'll translate it in text, so wie alt sind Sie, and we can have it speak it.
Wie alt sind Sie?
So you can use this to interact with other people, so it's kind of a nice sort of live translator. This also means that another person could speak in their language, and it will translate it into English. So for example, Ich habe ein Kopfweh. So there you go, that translates into I have a headache in English. Another big app here is Watch On, which uses the IR blaster on the phone to control your AV equipment. Now,